I'm such a creature of habit. I was thinking 6. I mean, 7, not 6.
And I was thinking, let's do it earlier, the better.
Sure, no, that works for me.
All right, so I'll call the November 29th, 2021 special selectmen meeting to order. It is 6:06 PM. I'm gonna make a note of this. All 3 selectmen are present. We'll start with agenda item 2, the 2015 school bond proposal to refinance. And you're getting a lot of background noise. I don't know what that is, but if I mute you, I don't hear all that noise. Is everybody else hearing it or is it just me?
I was hearing it too.
I was hearing it too,
Oh, wait,
but I'm not hearing it now.
right, because I muted Ken, but if he, well. Ken, I'm gonna keep you on mute. If you need to speak, just unmute yourself. But there was a lot of feedback of some sort that was coming through. All right, so Orla, did you want to make this presentation in
Sure.
regard to refunding?
Sure, I will. This is just follow up to the information that was sent out last week. Amy and I had been in discussion with regards to some bonding purposes because we were in the process of securing funding for the school roof, and this came up as a conversation piece. So they went back, our financial advisors went back over where we were. This bond was initially issued in 07 at a whopping rate of 4.5%. We managed to refinance it down to 2.4 in 2015. And what they're offering now is in the rounds of about 1.34. That's what the rate was last Wednesday when we had this discussion to start the process. So the general saving would be about $130,000. Now, obviously, we don't have the rate locked in, but based on the fact that we still owe about 5.5 million, the general saving over the rest of the terms of the loan, which is 6 years, December 27 is when the loan matures, would be approximately 130,000. So we really wanted to bring it to your attention because it's worthwhile. The rates are going up. So let's try and take advantage of this higher rate. This is the highest rate we have of any of our loans. So that's why we're here today. Does anybody have any questions?
Suzanne, I know you had some questions.
Yeah, I have some concerns. Now, I understand that it's not going to extend the length of the bond. It will still be 6 years.
Correct.
And it will cost the town 50,000 approximately.
The fees involved are approximately 50,000, and that's on the high end. It's built into the loan, so we actually don't receive a bill for it.
So it's added on so long. So Orla, I have some concerns that this should go to the Board of Finance. I stated that. I understand that the attorney is stating that they don't feel that it has to legally, but I think this needs to go to the Board of Finance. And so I was able to look it up and see that in 2015, it was approved by the Board of Finance after it was approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, that's right. I did look back at that too. Now, at the time, the bond attorney did not inform me that it was not necessary to have both boards' approval. You know what Suzanne, you know how I am for transparency. The idea of not running something by the Board of Finance is kind of scary for me. Obviously it was a concern 2 weeks ago because we had a timing issue. If you guys would feel more comfortable, we can schedule a special Board of Finance meeting. I don't think it's worthwhile waiting until the board meeting, which is on the 16th of December. But I did invite the Board of Finance to this meeting, not to necessarily create a joint meeting, but to invite them to the meeting. And we did run by this whole process with the chair first. But if you guys were to approve it here tonight, we can certainly, Amy and I can approach the chair tomorrow and try and get a scheduled Zoom meeting for the Board of Finance and get it approved. And if you wish, we will not move forward with it until we can get that scheduled.
I'm not comfortable without having the Board of Finance approve it. This is a Board of Finance thing. It changes. You know, this is a big dollar amount, and I think it needs to go to the Board of Finance. So I know that Aaron weighed in and felt it wasn't necessary, but it's a 6-member board, and he's one of 6. I think this needs to be approved, documented, in the minutes, and then we've dotted all our i's and crossed all our t's.
I understand. I
Yeah.
understand.
So Orla, the objective was potentially to move on this on the 2nd?
So the
Okay.
date that he had proposed for locking in a rate was December 3rd. That's the
Okay.
earliest we can do it because we locked in the rate for the other loan. There has to be a
Right.
period of time between one and the other.
Yeah.
So
So
the
that
earliest
being,
we could lock this in is December 3rd.
that being said, I don't have a problem moving forward, but knowing that there is a history that in the past we did, and knowing that I would want all 3 selectmen to be entirely on board with moving forward, not just a majority. I would be in favor of approving it and sending it on to the Board of Finance for their approval. And I think that we need a 48-hour notice so we could notice the meeting and do a meeting with the Board of Finance virtually
Good, yes.
through Zoom on Thursday.
On Thursday, the 2nd, yes,
Yeah. And that would give us enough time still to lock in.
correct.
And hope that maybe it went down a little bit more.
Well,
And not-
depending
up.
depending on what happens with this meeting, either way, I'll be informing our financial advisors and our bond attorneys tomorrow with regards to how far we've got in the process. And at that stage, you know, they can give us an idea of where the rates are standing as of tomorrow on November 30th. And we can still plan for December 3rd. As long as that's within their parameters, we can still plan for locking in a rate on December 3rd. I'm not sure what the notification period is required. For example, they may say that if we're having our meeting on the 1st, we have to wait maybe 4 days or something afterwards. I can't answer that question right now, but
Okay.
we can schedule the locking in rate as soon as possible after it's approved by the Board of Finance.
Ken, what are your thoughts, Ken?
I'm looking at saving over $100,000 and taking the bond counsel's advice on this. And Steve Herbert and Aaron have already weighed in.
Right.
I see no reason why we shouldn't move forward with this. This is to save the town money. The Board of Finance is well aware that we borrowed X number of dollars, 20, whatever it was, X number of years ago. You know, that amount of money is quite a bit of money.
Mhm.
And I have no problem approving it based on the legal recommendations from the attorneys.
Yeah.
130 grand's 130 grand.
Well, I think that we're not gonna waste any time, though, if we're able to have a special meeting on Thursday and the Board of Finance can approve it at that point, then you're
Well,
still able to stay on the timeline.
And we still can't lock it in until Friday. So,
Yeah.
That would be the earliest we could lock it in. I'm just looking at some of the paperwork that I received from them with regards to a potential lock-in date. Seeing if there's any other specific information that I missed in the process. No, he doesn't specifically state that there's a certain amount of days. When I did speak to him on Wednesday, I informed that we were having this special meeting tonight. So, and I said, potentially we could lock in on the 3rd. He says, yeah, that sounds realistic. So what I will do is either way, I will inform them tomorrow morning. Once you guys decide tonight and any vote is taken, potential vote is taken, I will contact them first thing in the morning, let them know what the plan is with regards to a special meeting to be called for the Board of Finance on Thursday. Thinking we'll probably have to do maybe a 6 o'clock or something like that meeting, get
Mhm.
that out of the way and see if it's still possible to lock in the rate on Friday.
so, but because the Board of Selectmen is the legislative body,
Correct.
we could technically approve this resolution
You could.
that's before us tonight, just pending the
Approval by
basic
the Board of
approval of the
Finance.
Board of Finance.
I would recommend doing that. That's what I was thinking.
Right.
The resolution needs to be adopted by the Board of Selectmen regardless, not
Correct.
the Board of Finance.
So I would adopt it. I
Right,
had no
right.
problem with it.
So we can
We can
adopt the
adopt-
resolution pending the approval of the Board of Finance.
Correct.
Right.
If you wish to have that in the minutes, you can go ahead and do
And
so.
sending that off to the Board of Finance for their approval. That way it doesn't have to come back to us to approve.
Correct.
Yeah, they can hold their meeting and once they give it the blessing, we're all set.
Because I think we're all in agreement that we want to save $130 some thousand. Of
We'd be
course.
foolish if we didn't.
Of course.
Right.
Well, we just want to make sure that we're doing that. This is not going to extend or it's not going to change the terms of the loan. It's still a 6-year loan. It'll still be paid off on the date that it was supposed to be paid off after it was refinanced in 2015. And
Right.
even borrowing against it, with the 50,000 additional added to the loan, it's still going to be a savings of roughly 130,000.
Correct. Which is substantial. It's a
Yeah, it's money well spent.
difference.
Orla, just out of curiosity, does the financial advisor just look at Webster Bank, or do they look
No.
at other banks as well to
They
determine?
market. No, they market, they market usually between 8 and 10 banks. But there's generally banks that they do business with, which they know are going to accept. For example, we do a lot of business with Mellon. We do a lot of business with US Bank, Webster Bank, and we have in the past done business with Bank of America. But currently the best rates we tend to get are with US Bank and Webster. So our current loans are all between those two banks.
Okay. I kind of figured they did, they went bank shopping, but I
Yeah,
was
they do.
just curious.
Yeah, that's part of the fee
that we
involved
paid
in
to
the
them,
process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, I mean, I would make a motion that the Board of Selectmen adopt the resolution presented us tonight. The resolution authorizing the issuance of not exceeding $5,500,000 refunding bonds for payment in whole or in part of the outstanding principal of an interest and any call premium on the town of Thompson's $9,180,000 general obligation refunding serial note dated October 22nd, 2015, and cost related thereto. Approval of it pending the Board of Finance stamp of approval.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the adoption of this resolution? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approving the resolution as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Suzanne, you said aye, right?
I did, yes.
For some reason I couldn't hear you. I think I was saying it in unison with you. Okay, that motion passes.
Okay, thanks, guys. I'm going to text
Okay,
Aaron
cool.
after this meeting to give him the heads
Okay.
up of what's going on, okay? And
Sounds
I'll
good. Thank you,
I'll
Ella.
chat with you in the morning about it, Amy, okay?
Okay, great.
Okay, I'm going to sign off, guys, because the next part does not necessarily need to have me on it, okay?
All right.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Good night.
Orla.
Okay, bye.
All right, so moving on to agenda item 3, Connecticut Community Challenges Grant Opportunity. As everyone remembers, when we decided how we were going to disperse or utilize the funds from ARPA, had been presented that if we could leverage this grant in some way, leverage the funds as a matching opportunity for this grant that hadn't been noticed yet. We all agreed, I believe we all agreed that we wanted to take advantage. It was finally published October 18th. Tira is here tonight, our Director of Planning and Development, to discuss the DECD guidelines for this grant opportunity, and hopefully we can get a little extra bang for our buck. So I think, Ken, and Suzanne, you both received the summary, but Tira, did you want to maybe give us a quick overview or?
Well, particularly if any of the three of you have any specific questions, but I tried to lay it out pretty clearly for you. When the grant opportunity was first informally announced, in other words, without the notice of funding availability, with all of the guidelines, it wasn't exactly clear what DECD's specific priorities were. And the thought at the time was it was pretty much going to be a 1-for-1 eligibility with anything that was eligible for ARPA. That is mostly, but not entirely true. So once the NOFA did come out, and I think I copied that to you guys too, right? I was
Right.
pretty sure that I did. I went back in and, using the town's allotment of the ARPA funds as you guys had previously voted on it, and then trying to create a use for what we would then have available for the matching funds that would fit their priorities best with what had been discussed. There are a couple of things in there that had not previously been discussed in my report and summary, but that have come up since. I know, for example, that Janet Blanchette raised the possibility of funding some additional sidewalk and roadwork design for Main Street to try to leverage into another lot SIP, as we did because we had such good luck with that. So long story short, I did a rejuggle to sell to DECD, essentially saying, "Look, this is what the town's match funds would fund. And in return, here's what we're asking for you. And this is the pieces that DECD's money would fund." And that's what you guys have. But it would definitely require a little rejiggering of what you had already voted on. Not as much actually as I thought. The bulk of what you voted on sort of is stable and off to the side. And I tried to indicate that in those tables that I gave you as well. The 1.37 for the ambulance and salt shed facility, that's totally separate from this. You can go ahead and start spending that as you need to. Same thing with the money for the track. The money for the train wreck park, obviously I've already submitted that grant, so those funds are committed. So it was really the bulk of what I was playing with was the remainder of the 500,000 in contingency funds. Now, some of that we know was already spent on the ambulances, right? We can't unspend that. So that brought it down, there it is, to 331,000 roughly. And that's where we got it. I tried to pack all the soft costs into what the town would be paying for, because DECD doesn't want to pay for soft costs. And the percentage of soft cost to hard costs is 12% soft costs, 88% hard costs. That seems to me to be a reasonable proportion. And that's that. So any questions that you have about the specifics, how we came to that as opposed to other things. Essentially what I'm trying to present to DECD to meet their guidelines is a whole cloth sort of neighborhood revitalization project, because I think we can get the most mileage out of that.
Tara, did you send us the guidelines for the grant?
Yeah, that would be in the NOFA. Pretty sure I sent them both at the same time.
Did you? Sorry, I
Thought I
don't
did.
remember receiving it. You probably did, and
I might have sent it earlier. Let me see if it's not impossible that I didn't, but I was pretty sure.
No, you probably did, and I just somehow.
Go back into my email and see if I can find the sent. Oops, that's not my email.
No, I don't see it.
Maybe I didn't. I send this stuff to so many people.
And I've been getting so many emails lately that it could be possible you sent it, but I don't see it actually.
I might have sent it separately then, because I do have that email up in front of me and it just got the memo. So maybe I sent it at a different time. Oh, I know I sent it to somebody today though, so I can screen share it in a second. Hold on.
Or just forward it to me so I can look at it.
Well, the problem is that I can't, I'm on my laptop and
Oh, I
I'm,
get it. Okay.
having a little trouble getting connected to the VPN. I know I sent this today to somebody though. Here we go, NOFA. Okay, so do you have screen share set up,
Yeah,
Amy?
I can give you, yep, let me give you permission for that. Let me just get out.
I know this was on a timeline too. What was the timeline that this had to be?
The notice of intent is due this Friday. That's why we called it as a special for tonight.
Right.
because you want to, we all want to be clear on what it is that's being proposed.
Okay, there you go.
All right,
Screen
thanks.
sharing is done.
All right. There you
Right.
go. All right, let's see if this will share now.
Tara, how did you make out with the church, with the congregational church?
So I talked to them again last week. They haven't sent me anything,
Okay,
but as you and Orla and I had discussed, I was kind of more comfortable with the idea of of going in for round
Right.
2.
Right.
And
Okay.
going just into a partnership with them, essentially just using their funds.
I guess I'm supposed to go to the gym, but I went to the.
And they would
first
still have a deficit to make up there, but that
No, I
seems
was,
like a better
after
choice for
school.
them as well. So
Right.
that's what I'm anticipating now.
No, I went to the after school door.
Okay, so this is the NOFA. You guys can see that? You guys have that, right?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, so this bit, which is the priorities for the program, I copied and pasted over into the memo that I created for you anyway, but excuse me. So adaptive reuse of existing properties, very high on their list. Essential infrastructure, very high on their list. The housing bit that supports affordability, I believe, and based on what I know about DECD, I think they would also agree that the direct assistance program for facade improvements and, in the neighborhood would fit for them. Mobility improvements, there's a couple of things that tie into that. The proposal to do the designing and engineering of the Main Street roadway and sidewalks. And then the public space improvement, there's several of those. There's several smaller pieces included there. The wayfinding program, which we do have a shovel-ready plan for. The design of a small amphitheater for the park, which Amy and I have discussed before. The repair of the existing bandstand and gazebo, which I know has come up in public comment a few times recently. The basketball court, and then some design and hopefully implementation money for some improved landscaping for the 2 little gateway parklets. The one that's going to be created when we do the Blaine Road bump out, and the existing parklet at Swanson Park at the bend for Route 12. So again, taken all together, from the upgrades to the sewage facility, to the plan for the sidewalk, to the 65 Main project, to the improvements to the park, it's very much in the vein of the sort of creative placemaking and neighborhood revitalization priorities that they talk about, in some indirect and some direct terms in this NOFA. So if you go a little further down, where are we here? Here we go. You can see one of the challenges I had was this eligible uses. DECD would prefer that the majority of grant funds be used for construction and renovation related hard costs. I have asked DECD what they consider a reasonable portion. They have not given me a direct answer. I've batted this around with some other, some of my peers, and that 12% is probably about the top for soft costs that I would feel comfortable proposing. I couldn't really find a good way to bring it down any. There's probably a way I could get it down to 11 if I rebalanced it, but wouldn't really be gaining anything there. And then again, the match is 50%, so 1-to-1 verified, and cash or something with actual value, but not in kind. Like I can't, sometimes in grant applications, I can count my salary or a portion of my salary. That is not eligible here. If someone were donating land, for example, that would have financial value that they would count in kind. or as a, toward the match rather. But they're really looking for verified cash funds here.
So Tara, as I've thought about this, I mean, I'll be honest. The direct assistance, it's a sizable amount. It's the majority of, it's more than half of what, you know, the funding, the grant would be. And I'm not completely against it. I'm just wondering if instead of just doing the design work for the soundstage, could we potentially pull some of that money towards actually paying for the amphitheater? Because we know that that's going to be an important part of culture and activity in Riverside Park. I mean, right now, the Public Works gives you a trailer to use. And
No,
to
believe
have a
me, I
permanent-
know, I've been on that trailer.
I know, a permanent sound stage of some sort. I was just at Owenville Park the other day, walking my dog, and I saw the facility, the theater, amphitheater that they've had there since I was a kid. And something like that would give long-lasting benefits for the town and a great place to have concerts. And I'm not saying cut it too much, but can we put, I think we should put some money towards something that's of value that will.
No, I hear what you're saying.
Can we
This
go
would be,
back up to the description.
these would be my two, yeah, sure, Suzanne. These
Sorry.
would be my two sort of taking the devil's advocate or at least the opposing piece of the argument. One is, and this is something that was raised a little bit by some of the participants in the public engagement exercise, is that the town essentially did not dedicate either, you know, in the initial vote, did not dedicate any funds towards direct assistance from ARPA. And that was a big part of this. And I couldn't find a way to pull in anything that we had proposed under the recreation and early childhood element into this, with the exception of redoing the basketball court, which, you know, that's a far cry from what we had suggested. So that's one piece of it. Another piece of it is that knowing what I know about DECD's priorities, if I go in and tell them that the whole neighborhood is essentially has the potential to get a facelift, because that's really what we're proposing here, they're going to find that very favorable, which is not to say they wouldn't find the amphitheater favorable. I think they would. But we don't have a good sense of what the actual construction of the amphitheater would cost. So we could be not putting enough aside. So that's the second. The third piece, and this might be the most important actually, is that one of the priorities that they have is for public-private partnerships. With what we proposed here, the only one we have good potential for is a public-private partnership with Teague to administer this on our behalf. So the whole thing is like a little balancing act to try to hit as many of their priorities as we can, because I know we come up short in some things like the percentage of soft costs, or potentially we come up short in the percentage of soft costs. So we could rebalance it, but I wouldn't know how to rebalance funds toward the construction of the amphitheater. I think you could blow through a few $100,000 in there with no problem.
Absolutely.
Can I ask, can I first apologize? I missed the first part of your presentation. I muted the wrong muting thing and I thought we were reading it and I didn't hear you. Anyway, I apologize. So with that being said, I missed your whole description of the project.
Well, that's okay. I mean, the description
Sorry.
of the projects, if you just want the description of the projects, we can go back to the memo. And
That's what I missed that part of it when you were talking about the summary and going over the
no, that's
project.
okay. That's all right. I mean, you know, that's what we're here for, right? So let's go all the way down to all the tables, right? So we're talking about roughly $1,012,000 to play with in terms of the town's match. So this is what I'm suggesting. We tell DECD, we will pay for with that
Okay,
roughly 1 million. We will pay for 753 and change in upgrades to WPCA, which is a slightly higher amount than you guys had voted on previously. But that I think is the number that Roland had come up with, or it was the median of what Ty and Bond is somewhere in there. I'm saying that we will pay out of our ARPA the 40 grand to Teague to administer the direct assistance program. The 31,720.50 is for the quote unquote soft costs for 65 Main. We have a good construction estimate, but in order to pull a building permit, it actually needs an engineering plan, and the permaculture landscaping plan would run about 15 grand. That's actually something I have a good estimate for. 75 grand, oops. 75 grand for Main Street sidewalk design. That's should be slightly amended to say sidewalk and road work design. Janet pointed out to me that the $75,000 we paid to Freeman and Company is for a mile of sidewalk. That's a half mile of sidewalk and also a road that needs some redoing. So she thought that was reasonable. And LOTSIP would cover both of those things if they accept the plan once we have it done. 10 grand for the Blaine Road intersection bump out design. That would include LID design, which is low impact development drainage, and also making it, I've suggested design a parklet for recreational fisher, because that area gets used for that all the time. And it's right at your gateway, right? So you don't want it to be an eyesore, you want it to be appealing. 40 grand was suggested for designs for Swanson Park upgrades, because that includes any substantial addition of parking that could get up in there. And that also includes stuff like the specs for bidding assistance and contract administration. And then another 40 grand suggested for the design of the amphitheater. Again, same thing, existing condition survey, design construction, bidding assistance. And then Brian Santos came over and did a walk around with me on the gazebo. He thinks 12 grand would cover everything that needs to be done there. And then another 10 for the repair of the Riverside Park basketball court, and Brian Liebensee pulled that. So that's our 1,012,296.90. That's what I'm suggesting we would pay for. And what I'm asking DECD to underwrite is the construction costs for 65 Main, the direct assistance implementation costs, in other words, the funds that would be dispersed by Teague on our behalf to qualifying homeowners in that neighborhood, the installation, fabrication and installation of the wayfinding system, because we do have a shovel-ready plan for that. And then the remainder is not granular enough at this time, but this 61 grand roughly would be the hard cost. In other words, the implementation costs for the two landscaping projects that I think have the most value from a DECD standpoint. And that would be the Blaine Road bump out and the 65 Main Street permaculture park, which is that 3-ish acres of the Riverside Park parcel that backs up to 65 Main. And Amy and Orla and I went over all this last week. So Amy's seen this before. You know, you guys are seeing it on shorter notice.
So question about the basketball park. Wasn't that supposed to be repaved, and am I remembering this incorrectly? It was supposed to be repaved by the town 2 years ago, maybe?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Yeah, it was. That's the one in Riverside Park, down by the housing complexes, right? Down by.
Yep.
Yeah, that was supposed to be done by Rich.
Right. So that was not done? Correct?
Not as of yet.
Okay. And.
Was money ever put aside for that? Because
You were looking at labor cost and whatever coming out of the for asphalt.
were they actually thinking of putting pavement though? Because a basketball court should not have pavement. I hope that the 10,000 is a better surface.
The 10,000 is a ballpark estimate that Brian Levensey got for me from a guy he knows in that business, and it was a rubberized court. It was not just
Okay,
asphalt. It was to standard.
okay, good. 'Cause that seems inexpensive if it's to standard, but I would want to make sure that we had enough in that, because certainly just paving a basketball court isn't acceptable. But I don't know what was in place or if there was something in the budget from before.
Now that there was strictly an asphalted court prior, they planted pine trees which undermined the asphalt.
Okay,
Oh, is that what happened?
Yes, the roots got under it.
okay.
Okay. Are we, I am
Oh,
not, some of the projects in here, like 65 Main Street still doesn't have an understanding of a use as well as who's gonna maintain it. That one,
At the last, I will say, I mean, I've felt very similar about 65 Main, but at one of the previous Turtle Lot Trust meetings, they put it out there that if you can find this grant or that grant, they were fully in support. There were a few of us that lost the vote on that. And I mean, they're the ones that technically oversee, if I'm correct. And, you know,
well, there is something very mushy about that whole chain of command, but nonetheless, in terms of what DECD will love, this to them would be a very appealing project as we've described it previously. Now, and this is a point that I think Rob Werge and I have both made, although he makes this particular point more strenuously. Nothing can be done of any value with that building if it isn't in good repair. So if we are proposing what I have proposed, which is that it be a small business center of some kind, that directly aligns with DECD's priorities. If we go, and this is what I've suggested all along, if we go in the final programming or in the programming phase to essentially a community workshop on it to figure out exactly how it best serves the community, then we map it to that. I know towards the end of some of those discussions with the Turtle Lot Trust, even some of the resistors were saying, well, if we could do something that, you know, mapped it more closely to something happening at the school, maybe that would make sense to them. And there may be a path through there. You know,
and I think,
go ahead,
Kara,
Amy.
if I can jump in too. Me as one of the more of the resistors, I was kind of interested when it was brought up as more like an adult education or some type of educational platform where you're training the post-high school ages.
the
Where
transition program.
the youth
which
people that
includes-
aren't, the young people that aren't sure where they want to go, oh, let's help them find a career path because maybe they've fallen through the cracks or they don't know where to go.
And that's not fundamentally all that different from what we were
Right.
proposing. It's just what I was proposing
Absolutely.
was a little more focused on food systems, right?
Right.
So it was always, every time I wrote a grant for that, it was always stipulated in there that it would be a community-based programming process before any final decisions were made. But the hurdle has always been, we still have a building that is in danger of falling down.
And the challenge at one of the Turtle Lot Trust meetings was, well, if you can find a grant and have it paid for, that's always been, we don't want to pull taxpayer money, but if we can find a grant that covers the expense of the repairs and at least have a building that's not falling down, then I too would be in favor of it. And then we decide what we do with it after. Because with this grant, if I'm clear, we don't have to define what the building's going to be used for. Let's just get it back into shape.
I think if I define it with reasonable openness, right, that it is going to be for the purpose of community economic development, whether that be a food system related incubator, as we have previously suggested, a straight up work share facility, a continuing education facility for graduates from Turtle Lot Memorial High School who don't want to go on to college or can't even go to community college, where, we're arranging that programming on the municipal side. I think any of those open-ended uses hit DECD's soft spot, right? They want to see the kinds of community-based development that will encourage people to come in from outside later.
So I am not a fan of rehabbing 65 Main unless we have a plan to maintain it. And there's no guarantee that the Turtle Lot Trust can make that commitment. And it is town-owned property, correct?
It is town-owned property,
So there.
which is currently totally unmaintained because it has no.
So if I could
Use.
continue, if it's rehabbed, it could potentially fall back on the town to maintain. That's where I have a problem. I understand something has to be done with it, but just rehabbing, and the other thing I have is you've got a figure in there that probably is obsolete at this point. The number, you'd have to go down, but I think you have 244,000, and that might have been good 2 years ago, but construction costs have changed dramatically.
Well, every grant application has challenges like that. That is the estimate we have in hand, and it is a pretty thorough one. I mean, you adjust as you get the awards, right? So if you have to pull from one place in the final analysis, those things happen all the time. It's a chicken and egg thing, the programming versus the rehab. The rehab is the hardest thing to get the funding for.
I would love to have a few more days to look over what the potential or the possibilities are for this grant, because I'm not, if you could move it around, I wish maybe I do have that actually, because some of I'm not a huge fan of the 40,000 for Teague. I understand what you just explained. It just makes me wonder if there isn't another organization that we could pair up with to do some different, I don't know, direct assistance for homeowners. What does that mean exactly? How is that? There's just a lot that I don't understand in here, I guess.
So the 40,000 that we're proposing for Teague is a straight pass through to them for administrative costs, in other words, staffing costs, to administer that program on our behalf, to qualify the applicants, to disperse the funds for the direct assistance program for homeowners within the neighborhood, for renovation. Right, so income qualifying, all those things that they have experience doing.
Tara, it'll only be for the downtown Mill Rehabilitation District?
Sadly, I have described it that way because I think it's the most consistent with the whole cloth proposal that I'm putting together. In the back of my head, I'm kind of thinking if there's not enough uptake of the program within the neighborhood, then you expand it outwards. I would actually like to see it expanded outwards. I just think it is a harder narrative description, and these DECD grants do not make it easy for me to do the kind of narrative, that I would otherwise like to, where I could draw those through lines better. Certainly what I had initially proposed was something that was more community-wide. It's the same principle though, for people, for homeowners who need the boost to do renovations they otherwise would not be able to. And those renovations, would be things like roofing, siding, new windows for energy security. You can tailor that to make it more similar to some of the loan programs, for example, that Eversource and Connecticut Green Bank do for homeowners right now, 0% loans and blah, blah, blah. But we're not proposing loans here. We're proposing a straight grant through. And again, to give the facelift to the neighborhood is the selling point. But like I say, if there was low uptake, DECD is not going to object to that spooling out as long as it's consistent with what we told them we're going to do. It's improving economic outcomes.
There's no guarantee that we're getting this grant.
That is correct. There is no guarantee that we're getting this
So
grant.
these are our proposals, which is the putting up the soft costs, and they're going to fund the hard costs. Hopefully,
Mhm.
they could pick and choose from our list of what they wish to give us.
They could theoretically do that, yes.
So they're all worthwhile.
And the other thing I've proposed, which is, the last page, is essentially, if we don't get the grant, just revert back to
Right.
exactly what we had before, which, that 331 is still uncommitted. But, we either get it or we don't. And go ahead, Suzanne.
I'm sorry, can you go back to the the grant outline of what you can and can't do with it?
Yep.
There
we go. So these are their priorities.
Okay, so when I could, just a little bit, I am seeing, okay, so public space improvements. I'm seeing lighting and safety improvements. Did you give any consideration to the lighting in Riverside Park? Because I know that's an issue. I've heard complaints. And
that was
also,
not one of the ones we proposed.
Proposed originally.
Or in this iteration.
Suzanne, what would you propose with the lighting?
I'm
Because
sorry,
the
let me
lighting's
go.
on.
My dogs are acting up. Let me get them settled down. I don't have issues with kids. I have issues with dogs.
So the primary issue that's going on with lighting in Riverside Park, we have beautiful lighting in Riverside Park. Kids destroy the lighting.
Right. Safety,
So, and-
I wonder if there is ways of improving the lighting that puts cages around the lights or something so that they can't be destroyed. They're up higher, something to that effect, as well as security cameras up high.
We did talk about possibly including a security camera in the area of the gazebo.
Right.
But
And ultimately, I did not pursue a quote for that, partly because of the time, but I would say that would be someplace, again, that you could shift some stuff around, based on, if I'm totally honest, I think this 40 grand in design for,
Swanson?
I'm in the wrong one, sorry, for Swanson, I think that's high.
That's really high.
I think that's high, but that was sort of what I was discussing with Janet and Steve Lewis. That was how we thought the breakdown should go. I think that's high, and that's an area where I think we can take later, shift around later.
Would we be able to do that if it's spelled out as X?
Yeah, I think so. As long as it's within,
I'm-
the feeling of what we're doing.
Could you combine it just as $80,000 in upgrades for Swanson Park and Riverside Park? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
in
can
the-
probably make it more general than I have. I really like specificity when I'm putting this stuff in, because I think people respond to specifics when they're reviewing the grants. But it's not a bad point, Amy, that maybe we could bundle some of these things and make them more general. But
Right.
in the end, I'm going to have to describe them to somebody.
Right.
DEC's always been has always worked with us well. If we've saved money at one spot, that we can shift it over to another as we get into the projects. So I would have to think once they award it, as long as we're using it in the proper vein that we intended, they're gonna allow us to shift it a little bit.
Yeah, I would say there's good evidence for that, Ken. I mean, just that the last $75,000 of the bar grant for the engineering of the sidewalks, technically, that's not an allowable cost. If you read the letter of the bar grant, that's not allowed at all, but they agreed to do it because we were effective in using those grant funds. So, you know, it's beneficial to us in some way to have these highball estimates because it allows us to create the one-to-one situation in a tidier way. But I expect there will be funds moved around.
There was one other project, and I feel like sometimes that we need to consult, that we need to have more opinions on projects and what others would like to see done. But one thing that I have had in the back of my mind since the ARPA funds came available was the community church at the Thompson Common. And I know this, we haven't discussed this much, and I've mentioned it to Amy, but we've never had a place to, or funding or an opportunity to really discuss it. But
So if it's helpful to you, Suzanne, I am in conversation with the church. Initially, I had been trying to lean on them to come up with the plan that they would like to sort of append onto this application in time for me to get it in for this notice of intent. They didn't really, they're just not that far along. However, there is going to be a second round of this released. And our loose plan right now is that essentially it would be a private-public partnership with the foundation that they've just created to manage the rehab of the church and whatever they want to do with the Common and the Brandy Hill Church. They're developing that plan now. I would essentially be submitting that plan. The match funding would only be coming from their sources, right? Because we'd be out of funding by that point. It's essentially a very similar thing to what I just did on behalf of the River Mill developer. I put an application in on behalf of the town. All of the matching funds are coming out of the developer, right? So that's how we get to that. It's easier for me to put that in as a separate project rather than tack it onto this because the narrative again becomes more difficult. You're talking about a neighborhood that's 2 miles away, separated by a highway. It's a harder picture to paint. And since we already know they're going to be opening up a second round, there is no penalty to waiting it out with them and submitting separately.
okay,
All
Now,
right,
if they had gotten that back to me last week or the week before and said, here's exactly how we think we can do that, then I would have tacked it onto this again. No harm, no foul, but it would have been harder. It would have been a harder application to write and probably less beneficial to all of the projects.
I guess part of what I was saying is I'd like to see more public input on these projects. I'd like to have like answers to, could we have encompassed some of the school projects into this? Like their tennis courts that are falling apart or things like that. That's all in that area, but it's nowhere in this. It just.
I did consider
Not projects I would pick. That's
I
what
did
I'm saying.
consider trying to leverage in the track as well. The reason I left it out ultimately essentially was, again, that feeling of separation. Yes, it's in the neighborhood, but it's not as directly in the neighborhood. Again, we were talking about soft costs. I didn't want to include those. I wanted to limit the number of soft costs we were displaying to them. And that would be the same thing if we were doing the tennis courts. We'd be displaying soft costs. for stuff we just haven't done yet.
If it were. these
You're on
would-
mute, Amy, if you're trying to talk.
These would not be projects I would put, and 65 Main would definitely not be something that I would have ever wanted to see money spent on like this, as opposed to in comparison to like the track or the tennis courts, or when I look at some of the, the description again, I kind of see where some of those would fit in. I think that we need a little more public input sometimes when we're putting these things together.
Your deadline's Friday?
That's correct.
But we did have public input,
Yes, we did.
Suzanne, in the beginning, and some of these,
Amy,
some of the
I'm
projects
gonna
are
argue,
new.
I'm gonna almost argue that because the projects that were all picked were not picked by the public.
So the public isn't necessarily in a great position to pick projects.
They can make
And that was sort of
suggestions.
displayed in some of the comments we got. Not that they were all bad. In fact, many of them conformed to some of these priorities. But
Oh, some of the suggestions were fix my road. And that didn't qualify under ARPA, and it wouldn't qualify under this grant program. That's the
Right.
difference.
Right?
right,
we're
it's a different
confined.
kind. It's a different kind of thinking about what benefits the whole community.
But I'm wondering, because still that 550,000 looms overhead
Mhm.
with me. Is there any way, I would maybe lean on what Suzanne is suggesting. Why don't we take $100,000 and put it towards the track? Potentially.
We could potentially.
Does it have to cover the entire cost of a track?
I would say that anything I'm proposing that DECD is going to pay for, they're going to want to know that that is
Covering the whole expense?
covering the expense.
Yeah.
I don't think 244,000 is gonna cover the cost of 65 Main Street. I really don't.
That would
Well,
be my fear
the good piece about this is that it is a competent estimate. I mean, it was created very thoroughly.
2 years.
But it
The other
was-
good thing about it is that
Right.
while you can't use a half-finished track, we did phase out the construction estimate. So, for example, if the controversy continued over whether we could use the second and third floor, the first floor and basement would always be usable for the programming. So you can actually proceed with the activity and the use.
Well, ultimately, the fact is, we don't even know that we're gonna get this.
That's true.
This is the shot. If we get $1 million, great. We're that much better for it. The wayfinding system is shovel ready. They have the design and the plans for it. It's the Blaine Road intersection is supposed to get done in the spring. That would be extremely helpful to have some of the landscaping costs covered. We're not losing anything that we planned in the beginning. We're just gaining a few extra things. And there
I
were
agree.
plenty of people that said that we're not doing enough for homeowners. There were some people that thought that. I tend to differ, especially like businesses. They received thousands upon thousands and millions of dollars from the government that we're all going to pay for eventually. But yeah, it's a chance to get $1 million.
All right,
And if we don't get it, then we go back to our original plan and no harm, no foul.
That's right. I'll make a motion that we go with the proposed allocation of town match funding.
Do we need to read off everything or?
Well,
Just
I
as
did
presented.
create, if you want to be really thorough, I did create this suggested language. You don't have to use it. Again, this is me being really granular. So if you want to list it down, I did break it out here, including in the event that the grant is unsuccessful.
You know what, though, if you do that, then are we held to those projects?
Well, that's how she's writing the grant.
Exactly, but didn't you say there was wiggle room to be able to transfer funding?
There
without
has been in the
vote?
past with DECD, so.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So if you're that specific with it, how does that affect it?
Well,
after?
you have to show it broken down no matter what. This is the new figures.
Yes, I understand that, but in the motion, I don't think you need the detail. I think you can just make a motion to approve the project, the grant application as presented.
Yeah, that's fine. If that's what you guys are more comfortable with. Like I say, I did this so that you could have it line by line if you wanted.
And the only thing I would want is just that, if in the event that it's unsuccessful, that if everything reverts back to what was voted on the August 30th of 2021.
Yeah, so maybe just the general motion to, however you want to approve the money for the match funding, but then these last two statements, the prior commitments of the Board of Selectmen for the combined blah, 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 are not altered by this amended vote. And in the event that it's unsuccessful, it reverts. I think that covers you.
Yeah. And that to me, can I just, I'll second Ken's motion. Now we can have discussion. What's important to me is that salt shed and ambulance facility, public safety facility are still full on to go, because we need to get moving on those projects, preferably in the spring. And if we're still waiting for a decision from DECD as to whether we wouldn't have been able to spend those monies. So that was one of the benefits, and the train wreck park development, which I think we all agreed with the airline trail was important, and the design for the high school track. So all those
Yeah.
projects can kind of take root and get moving while we're awaiting the decision from DECD.
Exactly. There is no reason that you can't start contracting for, posting to bid for the design on the DPW facility. There's no reason that you can't move forward with the 72 that, Ty and Bond is looking for the design on the track. That can just happen.
So there is a motion. I already seconded it. My Jason's telling me I can second it. I was like, I already seconded it. Any further discussion? So all in favor of approving the application for the Connecticut Community Challenges Grant as presented, with the stipulation that prior commitments of the Board of Selectmen for the combined salt shed, ambulance garage, purchase of the ambulances from community fire, high school track renovation, and train wreck park development are not altered by this amended vote. And in the event that the grant application to the DECD Connecticut Community Challenges Grant Program is unsuccessful, the funding commitments shall revert to those voted on August 30th, 2021 by the Board of Selectmen. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I will say aye, just to have a full consensus of the Board of Selectmen.
Great.
think,
Thank you, guys. I'll get that submitted by Friday. We'll be.
When we
Thank-
have the minutes typed up, Suzanne will make sure that your concerns were absolutely addressed and noted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tara.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'll make a motion that we adjourn at 7:09. No, what time is it? 7:09 PM.
7:09.
Second.
Make that motion. And second, all in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Good night.